I think the most important thing about self-inquiry is to understand what it is, what you're doing when you're doing it. And anything that you use to do that will be to enhance or support or assist you in doing the inquiry. And the inquiry itself, it's very important to understand that the inquiry itself is a process of looking. It's a process of looking. So for example, in your case, if you say, well, I ask who am I? And there doesn't seem to be a thought that occurs after having asked that, right? And the reason I asked you, well, how do you know that, right? Because even if no thought occurs, right, the answer to how do you know that gives you another place to look. Because the answer to the question, how do you know that, is what? I asked, who am I? Did not detect a thought come up after I asked that question. So then what's there?
Just awareness, just consciousness.
Isn't that the point?
Right.
No, everyone's process is different. Everyone's experience when it comes to who you are is exactly the same. That's why when I talk to you, I say, in your case, right, because you have a unique process that you're going through. And I try and listen to the process so I can help people avoid continuing doing what isn't working. Simple as that. And in your case, what I would highly recommend is, as far as, instead of getting into the technique of the inquiry, right, just understand the essence of the process. The essence of the process is to look and see the truth. And by asking a question, that's just stimulating the looking. And the looking would be, and so, and it goes back to what I was saying to you before, when you said, well, I ask, who am I? And then, as far as I can tell, there's no thought there. And the first thing I said to you when you said that is, how do you know? Well, I'm aware that there's no thought there. Look at that. That's the heart of the matter.
That's it.
That's the heart of the matter. So no matter what happens during the process of inquiry, if you understand all of these promptings, all they're doing is giving you an opportunity to look and to look as far as you can see. And if you look as far as you can see, and if you answered the bottom line question of how do you know anything, the answer has to be awareness. And then it's not a question of, okay, do you understand that as a concept, or are you looking at it? If you keep looking at it, this is an interesting thing, because the way Angelo's talking about these things, he's saying that this is something that, as far as he can tell, is available to anybody. Because it has to be, because everybody's the same, because everybody is it. So how can it not be available to everybody, right? But then the question becomes, okay, if that's the case, is there a process that has it work for everybody, right? And as far as I can tell, what he's saying is, there are things that you can do, that seem to, because all these teachers that are teaching, like, Eckhart Tolle, he's an example of somebody that didn't really have a lineage or a teacher, and that's very rare. Same thing with Ramana Maharshi. He didn't have a teacher or anything. That's very rare. But the rest of these folks, the contemporary people that are around, they did a lot of practices and were involved in a lot of learning before they woke up. So there seems to be and I think that's one of the things Angelo's saying. He was a meditation practitioner for a long time before he woke up. The other teachers that are out there that are famous right now, Mooji, was a practitioner and a person who was a seeker for many, many years before he woke up. So it seems that there is a connection between these activities and the awakening experience. And in my own case, there seems to be a connection. I mean, I was practicing meditation and learning about these things from the time I was, maybe 19, 20 years old, and spent decades learning about these things, studying these things, doing the S training, doing retreats, doing intensives, studying psychology, and it was all, it was all because of the recognition I had that there was something very important and very powerful here. And over the years, there was, in my case, over the years, there was kind of a quasi-awake state that I had. When I look back at it, I can see that given the work that I was doing in the prison system, I had to have armor. I had to have psychological protection going to work every day because I had people trying to kill me every day. Not physically. Well, physically in one case, right? But mostly just trying to kill me in terms of getting rid of me from the career or kill me psychologically. So I had that, and there are certain situations. I mean, if you're a nurse that works in the ER, you better be armored psychologically or you'll just fall apart. You can't expose yourself to that kind of intensity and expect to be sane. So there comes a time when you consciously have to protect yourself psychologically and emotionally. That's been my experience. And because of that, for many, many years, my awake state was a quasi-awake state. I mean, I was awake enough to kind of have a sense of who I was, but it was still conceptual. But then it was also very disturbing, right? Because, and this is the case for a lot of people, because while I understood these things conceptually and it was clear to me that they were actually true, I had done so much in regard to the practices and the learning that I was still confounded about the fact that it didn't seem as if I actually had the awakening experience. It didn't seem as if I did. In fact, one of the things I used to do is I used to question myself, what, if I understand all this stuff that I understand, why do I still have so much trouble getting along with the people I'm closest to? That was always mind-boggling for me, It was like, what's going on here? I mean, I understand enough to I should be beyond this, right? That I didn't have an experience of what I understood conceptually that was complete. It was kind of, and then to make it more interesting, and this goes to something that you've shared here and other people have shared here, I had times when I was awake for a period of time. And I knew I was awake when I was awake. Everything was different, I felt, it's like the young woman said that Angelo interviews in one of his interviews. I felt like I won the lottery and I didn't win anything. I just felt that I didn't need anything, I didn't want anything, everything seemed to be great, But it never lasted. It would always come back, especially if I had to go back to work in the prison the next day, right? And then there were other times when I did intensive retreats, when I did the Vipassana retreat up in New England, where the shift lasted for like a month, a month that I was clearly in an altered state for like a month. But again, in those situations, it would leave me asking the question, well, maybe this is just as good as it's going to get for me. Maybe every once in a while, I'll have this opening where I can see things clearly and everything. And maybe just to remember that and keep that in mind when it's not like that will be useful. And it is, and it was. I mean, even if you just understand what's talked about here conceptually, and apply those concepts, it will be a pretty powerful self-improvement project. You will be better at being you, even though you're still not who you really are, right? And for me, the thing that was most interesting at all, and this is something that Angelo says and the other teachers say, is there's no way of knowing when this thing is going to actually happen. You can talk about it in terms of the grace of God, you know what I mean? That, and everybody that talks about these things talks about it this way. It's that it seems like if you learn to meditate and you meditate a lot and you study the scriptures and you study the teachings and so forth, that you're increasing the probability that you'll have this shift occur. That's what they say. And I think that that's probably the case, right? And in my case, it was, I was thinking about this the other day, and I haven't really spoken too much about this because it sounds so weird, but I woke up in the middle of an argument. I woke up in the middle of an argument with my wife, and I was totally identified, with my position about it and who she was being and why that was wrong and why I was justified in anything I had to say about it, and and this, that, and the other thing. And it really was the kind of argument where everything was on the line. It's like, no, I can't continue to go along with this, right? And it kind of was left like that. We had this argument. I don't even remember what it was about. And it was in the night, and so we locked horns. We got into this heavy duty conflict, right? And then it was clear on both sides of the argument that, this is about enough of this, right? And then we went to bed, right? And the next morning I woke up and I was not the same person. I was not the same person. And I thought about, I remember what happened last night, and I said, boy, that's so strange that I said that. So strange that happened. And then the only thing that I could think to do that made any sense is go to her and say, last night, I was totally crazy. I completely apologize. Can we just forget the whole thing? And that was the last time we ever had any conflict. And ever since that night, everything is different. All the time, everything is different. So I think it's important to understand that if that shift has not occurred yet for you, right, you've got to, because I look at this and I ask myself the question, what is, and this is the inquiry I'm in. I'm asking myself all the time, is there something that I could say, some encouragement, something that I could point to that would really be true in terms of people being able to have this experience occur, right? And the only thing that I can come up with about it, I think that the studying, the practicing, all that stuff, the retreats, all that stuff was all valuable, because it was all about making the idea that there was this possibility real and making it more realer and realer and realer, so there was no doubt at all about the fact that this was true, okay? But I think as far as I can tell, the thing that made the biggest difference has to do with the degree to which you're committed to this. Because just look at it this way. If the way you're related to this is like, I'm interested in this, I'm reading about it, I'm practicing meditation, I kind of like it, it seems to make a difference, maybe I'm not completely awake, but other than that, you keep doing your regular life, and you don't think about it beyond that, and you pay attention to your job and whatever it is that you give your attention to, right? That's not enough. Because it goes back to what I was saying before. It goes back to what Richard Davidson said. If the time you're attending to this and you're aware of this is still a small amount of time compared to all the years you've been relating to everything the other way, and if the amount of time and attention you're giving to this is still relatively small, given the rest of the time of your day and where your attention is there and what you're involved in there, then the time that you're not thinking about this or involved in this, you're practicing continuing to be who you thought you were. And then, in addition to that, because you're practicing and continuing who you thought you were, and because that's still in charge, right? As you get closer to that weakening, where that could drop, right? It will bring up its last stand, right? Which will be attack the teacher, come up with the conclusion that this is a mistake on your part, and you should go find something better to do, right? It'll pull out all stops, right? It'll have you start complaining that this is too conceptually and I don't get it, and you're just confusing me, and so your personality will cop an attitude. Your personality will, and this doesn't have to necessarily be overt, right? It might be only in your own mind, where you just say, oh, I'm tired, I can't be bothered with this anymore. Or you're just so pulled into the other activities of your life, and so pulled into the other ways that your mind's thinking, that you spend enough time there, right, that there's really no threat. There's really no threat to that personality that you've been being losing control. Don't forget, the personality will allow you to study this. It will allow you to practice meditation, you know. It will allow all that. Right till it comes right down to the bottom line of your letting go of that's who you are. And it won't, and that's the thing. That's the thing. You can't do it. You can't let go of who you think you are. You can't stop being who you think you are. You can't do it. You can't do it because your brain keeps producing the thinking and the feelings and the behaviors from there. Just keeps producing that. And you can't help but identify with that because that's who you knew yourself to be your whole life. You can't help but identify with that. So the degree to which this is radical in terms of how radical it is to let go of the idea that you're not who you've been being all these years, that's pretty radical, right? And the system that you are won't let that happen because the system that you are has it programmed that if that happens, you're dead. So it'll do everything that it can conjure up in order to get in the way of that happening, from having you fall asleep, from having you get frustrated, you know, from having something major happen in your life in terms of some very disturbing, traumatic thing. And then when that happens, you say, oh, this didn't help me at all. I'm not doing that anymore. There's all kinds of ways that, you know, the personality has a lot of scripts that it can run, right? Has a lot of scripts that it can run. It can produce a lot of drama to keep your attention busy, right? So you have to be willing to deal with that realistically, which means that you have to be very persistent. That's why I say, if you practice meditation and you don't do it every day, don't bother. Don't bother. When it comes to this, if you practice meditation once in a while and you like how it feels and it helps you to reduce stress, that's fine. Nothing wrong with that. But don't kid yourself to thinking that unless you practice meditation every day, as far as this shift is concerned, this realization is concerned, that even practicing meditation every day is only part of what it's going to take. And as far as I can tell, in my case, the thing that I can point to that I say seems to be related to the awakening experience is the extent to which I was committed to that. I've said that here before. When I was a young man, you know, I was committed to this possibility 100%. And the way that I related to it was no matter what happens, I will keep being persistent, keep reading, studying, practicing, whatever, until I die. And I may not ever have the experience, but that's the way it's going to go. It's not going to be an experience that you have again. If it happens, it's going to be an experience that nobody has. And it's not, and it has to be the same as it was then, because it's the only truth. But your mind will take that and play with it and then run it back to you like, oh, it's not going to be the same as it was before, right? And the amazing thing is you just go along with that. See, the thing is this, and this is the thing about this that really is the really bone-crushing truth, right? It's already here. It's already happened. You have to you have to speak as if that's not true, right? Because in reality, you either have to just accept that it is true, right? Or talk about it in a way as if it's not true, right? Which is then you're just contributing to the idea that it's not here when it is. So the honest truth about where you are, which is where you have to be in regard to this, is denial. You have to be in denial because it's here. It's already here. And if you're attempting to get something that you already got, you've got to be denying that you got it. So stop denying it. No, I understand you can't stop denying it. But even if you keep denying, you know, that's the thing about this that's so interesting and amazing, and why nobody can come up with a formula, right? Because no matter what you're doing, when the time comes for lightning to strike, it strikes. And the fact that you're aware of the possibility and the fact that you're interested in the possibility, right, that's lending itself to it, right, but still doesn't guarantee anything. In fact, just like Ramesh Balsekar says, you have to actually, and this is probably true of what happened to you and S, right? You have to actually give up 100%. Like you don't care. You don't care anymore whether you ever realize anything. That's true. There are a lot of people who get to a point where, like, they're at the end of the rope, right? They got no other move to make, right? And then they give up, like helpless. I'm helpless, right? And then it happens.